Hiya, welcome to Darren in the studio. Thanks for swinging by for another video. This time round, I'm going to be talking about somebody who I have loved musically since I was at school. Somebody I actually discovered when I was still at school in my sort of fifth form of secondary school, and I would be 16, going on for 17. And this particular gentleman that I'm going to talk about, I first saw on the television. We used to have a show here in the UK called The Whistle Test. It was originally called the Old Grey Whistle Test in the 70s. And then in the 80s, they revamped it and brought it back onto the BBC and called it The Whistle Test. And one particular edition of The Whistle Test featured a particular gentleman, Hank Williams Jr. and this other guy. They'd done it was a special sort of 20-minute program, sort of 20-minute feature on the program, and half of it was taken up with Hank Williams Jr. and the other half was taken up with the particular gentleman I'm going to be talking about. And that particular gentleman was Dwight Yoakam. Now, I've been a Dwight Yoakam fan, like I say, since about 1986, and this special that they did on the BBC's Whistle Test was around the time that his first album came out. Dwight's first album was called Guitars, Cadillacs, etc. He'd had some singles before the album, but the album came out in 1986, and we're talking about my 10 favorite Dwight Yoakam albums. Now then, before we go any further, obviously Dwight Yoakam has made much more than 10 albums, and I love all of them. For me, he's never made a bad album, but I've decided to go through the collection and just choose 10. Like with my other top 10s, my Kiss and my Alice Cooper ones, if I had to just take 10 to a desert island, these are the ones I would take. And I've ranked them from 10 to number 1. But I love all of them, all right? But I've had to put them, for my own sort of sanity in this video, into a top 10, all right? So we're looking at Dwight Yoakam, American country music star. Now, like I say, he came onto the scene mid-80s and was part of that new country kind of scene that was happening around that time. Other people that were famous within that scene were people like Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, Steve Earle. Now, whereas Alan Jackson was very chart-based, as was Garth Brooks, really, sort of playing the big auditoriums, and Steve Earle had sort of gone down the more sort of country rock kind of feel a little bit later on. Dwight Yoakam stuck to the roots because he came from those sort of very country music roots, the Appalachian Mountains and places like that. And he had his roots were in country music, and his family were of that kind of people. So Dwight, and still does, talk about those very sort of basic things, the losers, tough times, two-timing women, coal miners, things like that. So here are my 10 favorite Dwight Yoakam albums. Okay, here, don the spectacles. At number 10, 2012, this album came out. This is an album that I actually bought in America when I was over there. I bought this in Nashville, of all places. This is, like I say, his 2012 album. This is 3 Pairs. Now, this is a great little album, and this album has a bit of everything on it, really. Some old school country, some country rock, some ballads, stuff like that. Really nice album, this one. Nice picture of Dwight on the inside. And he's never really changed his style, although Dwight Yoakam has always been stylized, if you like, with the hats and the jeans and the jackets and stuff like that. Some great tracks on here. A couple of tracks that stand out for me. One is the title track, 3 Pairs. The other one, Dim Lights and Thick Smoke. That's a bit of a country rocker. So at number 10, in my 10 favorite Dwight Yoakam albums, would be 3 Pairs. At number 9, another goodie. This is from 1998. This is on the, I think this might have been one of the last albums on Reprise Records. Yeah, this is on Reprise. The Three Pairs album came out on the Warner Brothers label, which he signed to a little bit later on. But this is on the Reprise label, which he was with for many, many years. Produced by the wonderful Pete Anderson, this album. So at number 10 from 1998, A Long Way Home. Another nice record from Dwight Yoakam. Number 10, A Long Way Home. There's the back for you. Like I said, always been stylized. Dwight Yoakam always looks great. Some really great tracks on here. Same Fool's a great track. These Arms, another one, another good record. Title track, A Long Way Home. Number 9, Dwight's A Long Way Home. Okay, in at number 8 from 2005. This was one of his first albums, I think, that when he was signed to New West Records, I think sort of his contract with Reprise Records came to an end and he signed to New West, as did Steve Earle around about the same sort of time. 2005. It's an album which is called Blame the Vein, and this album sort of came in and really sort of shook up the country rock scene, really, because it really did make a bit of an impact. I think this actually got into the UK charts. Some fabulous tracks on here. More pictures of Dwight looking absolutely superb. There's the CD. Some really great songs on here. Blame the Vein, the title track, that's a wonderful song. Lucky That Way, that's a wonderful song. My favourite track on this album, though, is Intentional Heartache. If you ever get a chance, do check out Dwight Yoakam's Intentional Heartache. Great. From 2005, Blame the Vein, in at number 8. In at number 7, this album comes from 1995. Another of his albums on the Reprise label. Again, this album was very, very successful. I think all 10 of these albums were very successful for Dwight Yoakam. Like I say, from 1995, this is the Gone album. Put this in at number 7. And it's difficult to rank them, to be fair, because I love them all, and I almost love them all equally. So from 1995, in at number 7, Dwight Yoakam's Gone album. Again, some fabulous songs. Sorry You Asked is great on here. Baby Why Not? That's a funny song. Sorry You Asked is on. I've just said that, didn't I? Sorry You Asked is a great little record. It really is. This Much I Know. But One More Night. Heart of Stone. Another album produced by Pete Anderson, who was also his guitar player. I think Pete produced the majority of the Dwight Yoakam albums up until sort of like the late 2000s, I think. So from 1995, in at number 7, Gone. In at number 6, we're getting to the real sharp end of it now, because I think I love all these albums equally. This is from 1993. Again, it's on the Warner Reprise label. This is a fabulous album. This Time is the album. Dwight Yoakam's This Time from 1993. Again, produced by Pete Anderson. Pocket of a Clown, 1,000 Miles from Nowhere, 2 Doors Down, Ain't That Lonely Yet. This is just packed with fantastic songs. Good little record. In at number 6 from 1993, This Time. Okay, number 5 in my 10 favourite Dwight Yoakam albums. In at number 5, this is from 1987. This was Dwight Yoakam's second album. Again, on the Warner Reprise label. Used to have most of these albums. His first sort of 3 or 4 albums I had on vinyl, but sadly I went and sold them. But I've always had them on CD as well. So from 1987, in at number 5, it's Hillbilly Deluxe. You can see what I mean about the styling of Dwight Yoakam. This outfit that he's wearing on this photo shoot, you can find at the Nashville Country Music Museum, which I've been to, which is where I bought the Three Pairs album from. So from 1987, in at number 5, Hillbilly Deluxe, Little Ways, Smoke Along the Track, Johnson's Love, Please Please Baby, Reading, Writing, Route 23, 100,000 Miles, Little Sisters on here, nice little Elvis sort of cover, This Drinking Will Kill Me, Always Late With Your Kisses. Oh, what a fabulous record. And at number 5 from 1987, Hillbilly Deluxe. Okay, in at number 4, I mentioned this album a little bit earlier on. This was his first album from 1986. I think some of the tracks off this particular album were released as an EP and as singles. So some of the tracks came out in 85, but the album itself, Guitars, Cadillacs, etc., etc. This one is in at number 4. This is the album that really broke Dwight Yoakam. It was his first album. He'd done other things before. The first album that really shot him to success, especially on the Nashville scene. Although Dwight Yoakam never actually resided in Nashville and never really recorded in Nashville either. He always sort of like was based in California, and was kind of famous for sticking to his guns and staying in that area, although he wasn't from there. But him and Pete Anderson always tried to work in and around California. Guitars, Cadillacs, etc., etc. Like I say, 1986, first album, a very young Dwight Yoakam on the back there. This is Pete Anderson here, the bearded gentleman at the back, who I've met, a really, really nice guy. Met him at the Musician in Leicester here in the UK. Really nice guy. This has got some fabulous tracks on it. Honky Tonk Man, It Won't Hurt, South of Cincinnati, Guitars, Cadillacs, the title track, Heartaches by the Number. Some really, really fabulous tracks on here. He does a cover of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire as well on this album. 1986. In at number 4, Guitars, Cadillacs, etc., etc. Okay, it's the top 3. Let me know, obviously, in the comments below. Let me know your favourite Dwight Yoakam albums. 1988, this one, and I remember this album so well. This is the album, I think, that brought Dwight Yoakam to a UK public, because he was featured on the BBC radio show, which was called the Stereo Sequence, which was on Radio 1 on a Saturday afternoon, and they would share the frequency with Radio 2 and Radio 1 because they didn't have their own FM frequencies at the time. And this is only 1988. Can you believe it? It was like that. So from 1988, this is Buenas Noches from a Lonely Room. This is my I've put this in at number 3, but this could easily be at number 1 or number 2. You know what I'm saying? This is just a great album. 1988, Buenas Noches from a Lonely Room, again on the Reprise label, and again produced by the incredible Pete Anderson, who, like I say, was his guitar player on all these albums as well. This is such a fabulous album. I Got You, One More Name, What I Don't Know, title track, Buenas Noches from a Lonely Room, She Wore Red Dresses, Streets of Bakersfield, which he does a duet with Buck Owens on that particular track, Floyd County, just a wonderful, wonderful album. In at number 3, 1988, Dwight Yoakam's Buenas Noches from a Lonely Room. Number 2, this really is the sharp end of things, isn't it? Number 2, this album came out in 2003. And I think it's the only album that came out on the Koch label. I think I'm saying that right. Koch, Koch Records. what can I say about this album? Apart from, it's fabulous. It's another album produced by Pete Anderson, but I think this was the last album that was produced by Pete Anderson. After this album, they had a bit of a falling out and never worked with each other again, which is a shame. I'm kind of hoping that they're going to get back together and rekindle their production friendship. That would be great. This, like I say, from 2003, this is an album called Population Me, which I have to say, obviously I've put it in at number 2, but of all the Dwight Yoakam albums, this is one of my favorite albums, not only of Dwight Yoakam, but in my collection period. This is a fabulous album. Like I said, 2003. The Late Great Golden State, which I think was a single off this album. There was a big sort of hit on this album, although he didn't write the song. A song called Back of Your Hand is on this album. It actually finishes the album. Staying Up Late, Thinking About It, Trains, Boats and Planes. He does a duet with Willie Nelson on this album, and I can't remember what track it is. If Teardrops Were Diamonds is the track that he does with Willie Nelson on this album. 2003, Population Me in at number 2. And of course, some of you might know Dwight Yoakam as a movie star because he's been in quite a few films. Most popular film that I think he's been in, although you didn't see his face, was Panic Room. He's the guy in Panic Room who's got the balaclava on and he's acting a little bit strange when they break into the house. That's Dwight Yoakam, you know, and he's also a radio presenter now and a television presenter, but still makes music as well. Not put out an album for quite some time, but he does still makes great records. In at number 1. In at number 1. If you know me really, really well, you'll know what this album is. This album is fabulous. And it comes from 1990. I've got this on vinyl, but I've chosen to show you all my CD versions of these albums. 1990, my favourite Dwight Yoakam album. And this is my favourite Dwight Yoakam album. Always stays my favourite Dwight Yoakam album. This is an album called If There Was a Way. 1990 on the Reprise label again produced by his guitarist and producer Pete Anderson. 1990, If There Was a Way. Dwight looking very, very handsome on the back there. Like I say, he was very sort of stylized in the early days and remained that way, although his music stayed very true to his sort of country roots. There he is on the inside. 1990, If There Was a Way. All these tracks are fabulous. The Distance Between You and Me, The Heart That You Own. Oh, Takes a Lot to Rock You. Nothing's Changed Here. Sad, sad music. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Fabulous album. It really, really is. Does a cover version of Let's Work Together as the last track. Dangerous Man's another rocker. You're the One. You got to check this album out, folks. Dwight Yoakam from 1990, my favorite Dwight Yoakam album. That's why it's in at number 1. If There Was a Way. That's it. Thanks for swinging our way for another video. Don't forget to leave your comments and your views and all that kind of stuff. Remember to like, subscribe, you know the drill, all that sort of stuff. And thanks for swinging around, and we'll see you again very, very soon for another video. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Ta-da.